Okay, in the Art Scroll Rashi, we're on page 300. This is chapter 27. Verse 36 at the end. So, Jacob gets the blessing by impersonating his brother. And then his brother comes in and he realizes that he doesn't have the blessing. And first he says to his father, "Bless me also." As we pointed out, that means he's not challenging the transaction that took place. Not saying it was invalid, even though it was based on a mistake. Because prophecy confirmed it, just as Rivka said it would. So now there's an interaction back and forth between Esau and Isaac. Bless me also. So Isaac says to him, "Your brother came with cleverness," we talked about this, "and took your blessing." In other words, these blessings aren't at random. I crafted a blessing that I thought was appropriate to you, and Jacob got it. So 36, Esau says, is that why he was called Jacob? Because Jacob means heel. Yaakov in Hebrew means heel. Remember that Yaakov was born grasping Esau's heel. And it meant that what Esau has, Jacob is taking away from him. Rightfully, but that's the way he gets it. That's the way Jacob gets the things that he needs to have up to a certain point in his life. And he says, he did it to me twice, he took away the birthright, now he took away my blessing. And then he said, Esau says to his father, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Now, we have to be careful with the "for me" here. His father just told him that his father crafted a blessing with him in mind, and that blessing was taken by Jacob. So now, he can't mean, "But where's the one you made for me?" That's already gone. He already explained that. But the sense here, some explain, Rashi doesn't say anything here. Just says it means set aside. You didn't give away the whole world. There are other things that could be given. Whatever is left, give me also a blessing. So now Isaac answers that. He said to Esau, "Behold, a lord I've made him over you, little L, and all his kin I've given to him as servants. With grain and wine I've supported him. As for you, what can I do, my son?" Now, Rashi comments on something here which I don't think you could figure out unless you had seen Rashi. I certainly didn't figure it out until I saw Rashi. The spirit of Isaac's answer is, I already gave to Jacob, and because I gave to Jacob, I can't give to you. Now, he mentions certain things in particular. I've made him a lord over you. I put him in charge of all of his kin, relatives, and I gave him grain and wine. Now, if you go back and look at the blessing that he gave to Jacob, you'll see, go back, just glance at 296, that the way in which Isaac here mentions what he's given to Jacob is in reverse order. In verse 28, he says, "May God give you the dew of heavens, fatness of the earth, abundant grain and wine." That's the money part. And then people's, and then your father's sons, your brothers and your father's sons, you'll be a master over them. So being a master of them comes last. and the grain and wine comes first. Why would Isaac change the order when he's speaking here to Esau and saying, I gave it to your brother, so I can't give it to you? He's giving a list of things. Why wouldn't the list follow the same order that he gave them in? So I think it's very, reading and paying attention to the details, it's a very reasonable question. So Rashi on 37, Rashi on 37 says, Behold the Lord that I have made him above all his kinsmen. This blessing is the seventh of the blessings Isaac gave Jacob. And the commentator at the bottom of the page gives you the first 6. And by the way, it's important to remember that he gave him 7 blessings. There are certain places where that becomes very important. Maybe I'll share them with you, even though they're not Rashi, but I'll share them when we get to an appropriate place. Yet, he makes it the first when he speaks to Esau. Why would Isaac change the order? So he said to him, first of all, and most importantly, and this is the point that's prominent, you want me to give you a blessing? Of what use is a blessing to you? Because if I'll bless you with something that's good, if you will acquire possessions, they belong to him. Because I made him a lord over you. And whatever a slave acquires, his master acquires. You don't have any independent property. So what do you want from me? I can't, can't. And then therefore he says, what can I do? What is it possible for me to do for you? Now, what Rashi doesn't explain is why wine and grain and wine are mentioned at all. But at least he can explain the shift in the order. He puts the most prominent reason first. This cancels out the possibility of me giving you anything. Yes, what, you want to ask a question?
No.
Oh, I thought. Yeah, foolish layman. What? Okay, so that explains that why he turned it around, and Esau doesn't accept it. He doesn't accept it. He says, "Is there but one blessing to you, Father? Blessed be too, Father." Esau raised up his voice and wept. So it's not clear, like how Esau is responding. Rashi doesn't help here. But I think, by the way, if Rashi doesn't ask a question, I should have said this. I don't think I said this when I introduced the whole subject. If Rashi doesn't ask a question, that does not mean there are no questions in the verse. It can simply mean that Rashi had nothing to say about it. Rashi is not a catalog of questions. Rashi is a catalog of explanations where there are questions, but there can be places where he doesn't have. So don't read it negatively. When he does make a remark, then you have to ask yourself, what did he see that spurred him to make the remark? If he says nothing, there could be. And here I think it's clear that Esau is not, he's just speaking out of desperation. There are places in Chumash where people speak out of desperation and say things that aren't logical. If we get there, Yitz Hashem, well, we have to change subjects, but we get there, at the end of Sefer Bereshis, the brothers say something to Joseph, this coming week's Parsha, which is really illogical. Really illogical. The only explanation that I know is they were so desperate. You know what they say when a person's drowning, he grasps at a straw? So you ever heard that expression? Well, he's going down and the straw's floating. It's floating! And the straw's not going to hold him up. Can't hold up his weight, but it's floating and I'm going down. So you grasp at a straw. That's what happens over there. And I think that's all I can say here is to what he was just expressing desperation. Now, so his father answered and said to him, Behold, of the fatness of the earth shall be your dwelling, the dew of the heavens from above. By sword shall you live, your brother you shall serve, shall be when you will be aggrieved. That's a very tricky word in English. They did a good job here. You may remove his yoke from your neck. Now, this has to be taken apart piece by piece. First of all, some commentators point out, the Rashi doesn't, notice that it does not say that Isaac blessed him. The verb to bless is used 3 times when Isaac is speaking to Jacob. He doesn't use it even once. He answered him. So if it is a blessing at all, it's very muted. It doesn't have the same power, the same significance as what he said to Yaakov. Now, let's compare this with what was said to Yaakov back in 28. What do you see in the first phrase, the difference between here and between where we are in 28? Both mention do and both mention fatness. What's the difference? Okay, number one, that God is left out, and we did talk about that. That when he thought he was speaking to Esau, he said God because he said, I wanted to depend it upon your earning it. Good, let's do that again. Now when he discovers that it's Jacob, he has to rethink. I wanted to give this blessing to Esau. I wanted the blessing to be on the basis of his earning it. I was wrong. Divine providence didn't want it that way. That goes to Jacob. What shall I do for Esau? I want to do something for him. What shall I do for him? Especially after this four-way interaction back and forth. So he says, well, if Esau wasn't worthy of that blessing, I have to think, why? What in that blessing was a misfit for him? And it could be 16 things as a misfit. And one that he concludes is to make it dependent upon his earning it, not such a good idea. Because I want him to have the blessing. And he might very well not earn it. And we saw this in the Rashi over there, that he said, this is where Solomon learned, when Solomon dedicated the temple, he says something very interesting. It was altogether interesting. He dedicates the temple, and he pleads with God that people who pray in the temple or via the temple should be answered. And as I pointed out then, the only activity in the temple that Solomon mentions is prayer. If all you had was Solomon's dedication, you would not know the sacrifices are offered there. So if you're looking as the cult of animal sacrifices as crucial to the primitive Hebrews, think again 16 times. Only prayer is mentioned there. Yes, there are sacrifices there, but only prayer is mentioned in the dedication. And as I point out then, as the verse points out, never in the whole 1,000 pages of Tanakh does God say, offer me sacrifices and as a result I'll give you X. Nothing is ever offered as a result of receiving sacrifices. It always says, offer sacrifices to me here, and if you keep my Torah and all my mitzvahs and do all my commandments, then you'll get certain benefits. But it never says it for the sacrifices alone. Okay, so now he leaves out God's name because he realizes that there's a good chance he won't earn it. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, I didn't finish. So now when Solomon says, please answer the prayers of people who pray to you, he splits it into two requests. If the person praying is a Jew, says Solomon, give him what he deserves. And if the person praying is a non-Jew, you just give him what he asked for. Don't say what he deserves. Because Solomon wants him to have it. And he says, if I make the non-Jew's prayer answering be dependent upon his earning it, there's a good chance he won't get it. And then he'll become bitter, and he'll say the Jewish God doesn't care, the Jewish God doesn't listen, or the whole thing is a fake. So he says, with respect to a non-Jew, give it to him even if he doesn't earn it. Where did Solomon learn to do that from? He learned to do that from Jacob. So that's the contrast between, for Jacob, where it says God's name, and for Esau, it does not say God's name. Okay, you got a question?
Yeah. Maybe like I heard a sacrifice could be given, like you could say, I'll give this sacrifice and then I'll go do Averas, and then this sacrifice would be like a prayer doesn't really work like that. Like you can't really do that.
First of all, what you are quoting, the Havdil, comes from the medieval Christian church. It was called indulgences.
Yeah,
and in addition to giving money to the church to receive absolution for things you did in the past, there was someone went so far as to say, next month I have my plans, so I want to get free for it. I'll give you the money now, and then I can do what I want next month. From our point of view, that's an impossibility. That's a moral and spiritual impossibility. So no, you could never have anything like that with sacrifices. No, absolutely not. Okay, now the second thing, however, look again at the dew from heaven and the grain and wine, and tell me the difference between what is said to Jacob and what is said to Esau.
As far as with Jacob, saying that it will be given as opposed to with Esau, it just says it's his. Or as opposed to like
Yeah, okay. Shall be your dwelling. The other says it'll just be given. Yes, okay, but there's something more striking than that.
With the blessing to Jacob,
Dwelling?
He's talking. Yes?
Well, at first, with the blessing to Jacob,
Yeah.
it's that God's going to give him the dew from above, and with Esau, the blessing says that it will receive dew from above.
Yeah, but what's the difference between them?
That God's not giving Esau the dew from above.
Because God's name is missing. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about that. Because putting God's name in means that you got to earn it. So when he was speaking, in the first blessing, Jacob is standing there, but in Isaac's mind it's Esau. And he says God's name, and the name that he uses for God is the name of judgment and justice, Elohim. And what he's saying is, I'm giving you this blessing that you should receive the dew from heaven and the grain and the wine and everything else when you deserve it. You should earn it. Now, he thinks he's blessing Esau, but it turns out to be Jacob. Shock, surprise, astonishment. How could that be? It's really Jacob. Okay, so Jacob gets the blessing. Now, when he's going to do something for Esau, he has to think, why did divine providence work it out that what I wanted to give to Esau was a mistake, was wrong? Because actually, prophecy confirmed that Jacob should have it and not Esau. So says Isaac, when I crafted in my mind this blessing for Esau, I made a mistake. Or maybe I made 6 mistakes. Something's wrong with what I was trying to do. Or some things were wrong with what I was trying to do. So one of the conclusions he draws is, I made the blessing dependent upon his earning it. That's why I put in God's name. That was a mistake. That's too high a demand for Esau. So in the second verse where he's talking to Esau, he's talking to Esau, there he leaves God's name out so that it will not be dependent upon his earning it. That's the difference between God's name being in the first one and not being in the second one. I'm asking a different question now. Both of them refer to dew from heaven and grain and wine. And I say that the references are different in an important way. Yes?
I mean, and one says that Jacob will be given, and the other one will be dwelling.
Okay, one is given, one is dwelling. Good, and he said that. And I said there's something else that's even more striking, more important. And why am I stressing this? Because you're not sensitive to it. When I show it to you, you'll say, "Oh gosh, that's right on the surface," and it is on the surface. You haven't been taught how to read. And I mean that literally. You have not been taught how to read. You think you know, yeah?
That Esau's not getting the abundance of grain and wine.
I think he is. The fatness of the earth. The fatness of the earth. What does it say by Jacob? I'm sorry. Leave out the grain and wine. I'm sorry. I didn't speak correctly. The fatness of the earth. What's the difference between the dew and fatness for Jacob and the dew and fatness for Esau? The order.
yeah.
The order. Ribono Shel Olam. In the case of Jacob, it's dew first and fatness second. In the case of Esau, it's fatness first and dew second. That's not a joke. That's put in there on purpose. You read that, you should say, hey, wait a second, reverse. And the answer for this is very simple. What are you going to do with the dew from heaven? Drink it? Make a reservoir out of it? What are you going to do with the dew from heaven? The answer is, you're not going to do anything with it. You have to realize that's where it comes from. That's where all the blessings come from. They come from the dew of heaven. From that comes the fatness of the earth, and the grain, and the wine, and everything else. So he's asking for an acknowledgement. So he says, when he's thinking that Esau is worthy of this exalted blessing, he thinks, I want you, Esau, to look upwards, to look heavenwards, to recognize where things come from, and then enjoy it, the fatness, the grain, the wine, wallow in it. I don't mind if you start by thinking this is where it comes from. when I was first becoming religious, and I asked my Rebbe Zatzal about eating and how I should think about it. He said, "Are you going to make a blessing before you eat?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, so eat." If you start with the blessing, and if you have to make a blessing afterwards, so you're already connected to it, to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. We start with that, your eyes are upward. Then you look down on the plate. But first they're upward. And then it isn't Esau, it's Jacob. So here's the second thing that Isaac says to himself. That's not the right way to approach Esau. Don't ask him to look upward first. Don't ask him to look upward when he's hungry. No. Give him the fatness of the earth and hope that afterwards, when he's satisfied and he's had the enjoyment, then he can look upward to acknowledge. But more than that, you can't ask from Esau. There's another, it's just a shift, but a shift in order is a very significant shift. Yeah.
Just since the way we were told of how to do the blessings for food, as we gave that example, I heard that the bracha that is the Raisa is the Achrona, and the other one is the Rabbanan, right?
Right.
So is there some relation with this specific approach in the parsha?
Let's see. It's an interesting question. Our blessings for food, the one that for sure is the Raisa is Birkas HaMazon, which is afterwards. Bracha Achzmin Shalosh, some think is the Raisa, but that's also afterwards. And the ones before are Durma. I think you're right. I think there is and I think it fits pretty well into what I've said so far. What he's saying in the first blessing is, have your eye focused upward, recognize where it comes from, and then enjoy it. When it's really Esau, and he knows it's Esau afterwards, what he says to him is, okay, I can't ask from you that you should acknowledge it beforehand. That's too much. But at least acknowledge it afterwards. And that means because acknowledging it afterwards is more important, more fundamental. It's got more power. If you're not capable of beforehand, but at least do afterwards. Because afterwards is more important. The thought of doing it beforehand is extra, in addition to doing it afterwards. Right? So it fits reasonably well.
May I ask
Okay, so now he says, by sword shall you live, your brother you shall serve. I don't think there's a but in the Hebrew. No. And I don't know why they would put a but there. And yet it shall be when you are aggrieved, they write. The word in Hebrew is very rare, tarid. And you can remove his yoke from your head. Now this word tarid, first of all, it's very rare in Hebrew, and it has a very complex meaning. So look at the Rashi here, and the second half of his commentary on 40. They translate aggrieved, which I think is a subtle translation. Rashi says, the word is an expression of pain. And it brings a parallel verse. I feel like pain in my speech. Now, watch how Rashi does this. As if to say, when Israel will transgress the laws of the Torah, and you will have a claim to be aggrieved, you'll have a claim to be aggrieved over the blessing that Jacob took, you may remove his yoke. Rashi is trying to avoid the idea that he's being told, well, if you're in pain, then you'll be able to rebel. What? In pain? If you have to serve somebody else, you'll be in pain, all right? That's quite right. That's what it means to be condemned to serve somebody else. So Rashi wants you to understand that this is justified pain. Not just you're in pain. You have a complaint, a justified complaint against it. And that's why Rashi puts in, from Chazal, he didn't invent this himself, that Jacob will not live up to the laws of the Torah, then the pain that you feel in being subjugated by him, which he got from the blessings, Jacob doesn't deserve anymore. And then you'll be able to throw it off. Now, this, as far as I can tell, wasn't implied in the original blessing to Jacob. But in general, we have a thought that when God offers you blessings, you have to deserve it. There's a hidden clause at the back of the contract that if you fail too badly, then the blessing won't apply. The blessing is not absolute. And in this regard, I'll just mention what the Rambam says in the commentary in the Mishnah, that when you look at prophecies which predict things to happen in the future, they come in four kinds, says the Rambam. They're based on two distinctions. Either, this is God speaks the prophecy to person A. So either God is speaking the prophecy to person A about A himself, telling him something that will happen to him in his life, or he's speaking to A about something that will happen to other people. And then A is supposed to go and tell them. That's one possibility. And the other possibility is either God is giving him a prophecy that something good will happen, or he's giving him a prophecy that something bad will happen. That gives you four possibilities. To himself, good or bad, and to somebody else, good or bad. Of the four, only one is an absolute commitment. Only one. Only one is where God says something's going to happen, it must happen. And that is where it's something good said to A about B. In any case where the prophecy says something bad is going to happen, it might not happen. It's not absolute. And if the prophecy is about something good, but it's said to A about A in his own life, it doesn't have to happen. The only case that has to happen is where the prophecy is a prophecy of something good to A about B. Now, the explanation is roughly like this. If the prophecy is a prophecy of something bad, then it's meant as a warning. This is what can happen if you continue to fail. It's not a prediction of what will happen, it's a warning that if you don't change, then your fate can be. It's not also near the commitment if you don't improve, but it's certainly meant only as a warning. That's why it's a cardinal Jewish belief that if people improve, especially if the Jewish people were to dramatically, nationally improve, then all the predictions of bad things would be wiped away, because they're only meant as warnings. And when it comes to an individual person, the prophecy that this good thing is going to happen to you is meant something like a bonus. You know, you're working and there's a project and you're getting paid a salary, and the boss says if you finish 2 months early, then everybody will get a $10,000 bonus. It's meant as an incentive, but only as an incentive. In Jacob's case, which we will get to, Hashem, it's pretty explicit in the verses that it's so, but it's a general rule. So here, the blessing that was given to Jacob was given to him for himself. And that being the case, he has to earn it. If you say that it implies for the rest of the Jewish people later, then it's also, he's receiving it for the Jewish people. It comes to him as the father of the Jewish people. They get it from him, and it comes in a conditional form. So that's why he can put it here. But that's why Rashi is moved here to make sure that he used the word aggrieved. Aggrieved in English, I think, carries both connotations. It means pain, but it means pain that has a justified complaint behind it. Not just that you happen to be in pain because you drank tea that was too hot or something. Okay. Now, Esau harbored hatred toward Jacob because of the blessing. His father blessed him. As I pointed out to you 2 weeks ago or more, he complained 2 pages ago that Jacob cheated him twice. The birthright and the blessing. That's what he complained when he was speaking to his father. But in his heart, the birthright meant nothing to him. He only hated him for the blessing. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father will draw near, and I will kill my brother Jacob. Now that, I'm very glad to see that. because that means they've changed it from what's written in the older versions, the blue book. In the blue book, it says that he's hoping for the days of mourning for his father to draw near. He's wishing for them to draw near. He's wishing for his father to die. I think that's impossible. His father told him, I don't know when I'm going to die. That's how he introduced the whole sequence. So his father obviously feels that he's vulnerable. So he's counting on it being clear, and he won't kill Jacob until his father dies. Why not? Why is he going to wait? Well, what's one thing got to do with the other? Yeah.
So, as far as the previous translation, would that kind of go against the opinion that we know that pretty much Esau's only merit was that he honored his father?
100%. That's one of the reasons why I can't understand it. He truly honored his father. He got credit both in the Torah and in the oral tradition as doing that mitzvah as a mitzvah. You're going to tell me that because of this disappointment, he's going to now hope that his father will die quickly? I think that's just, incredible. And they've taken that out here. Okay, so now, but the question is, what's stopping him? That's what motivates Rashi's remark here. Look at 41. The days of mourning of my father will draw near. This will be understood as it sounds, so that I should not cause father pain. And I think that this, what does he want here? No, it's not here. Where's the one? There's no one. I think that this is quite striking. After, through his father, interacting with his father, he had this gigantic disappointment. He still can't imagine causing his father pain. He hates Jacob, he's preparing to kill him, but not while my father's alive, because I know it will cause him pain. Yes?
Maybe you learned from Cain.
I would hope that he would learn from Cain not to commit murder altogether. Wait until my father's dead, and then I'll kill him. Okay. I think it's a little hard. Now, here's an easy one. It was told to Rebekah the words of her oldest son Esau. Let's stop there. Are you waving the red flag?
Yeah.
Why? What's wrong here?
Rebecca already knew.
Let's see. Let's get straight now. What was she told?
He was told pretty much what Esau was thinking.
Okay, you say she was told pretty much what Esau was thinking. So wouldn't you like to ask? What do you want to ask?
How did she hear it? Or, yeah.
I mean, how did she hear it? But be a little more specific. What's the problem?
Yeah.
It was his thoughts.
Say again?
It was his thoughts.
Yeah, it was his, how did anybody know? Jeeves the butler was hanging around Esau, right? But he was only thinking. It says he said in his heart. It says explicitly he said in his heart. Now, how's she going to know that?
Because she was his thoughts.
Good. Very good. That's what Rashi says. Look at 42. Through the Holy Spirit, it was told to her what Esau was contemplating in his heart. Now, strictly speaking, since you said it, that she's a prophet, strictly speaking, there is a distinction between what's called Holy Spirit and what's called prophecy, even though sometimes they're used interchangeably. It's a whole long subject, which I'm not going to go into now. But she had a direct communication from God on whatever level it is, and that because otherwise there's no way that it could be done in natural terms, and that's why Rashi says it. He's filling in a hole in the scenario. One of the things that Rashi does. If the scenario says something which your mind says you can't understand how it can happen, so he's going to fill it in and enable you to understand it. This comes from Bereshis Rabbah, right? It's also a midrash. Okay, so now back to 42. And she sent and summoned Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, behold, your brother Esau. Now, hear the translation. We'll see the right translation of Rashi. Your brother Esau is having second thoughts toward you to kill you. So let's take a look now in 42, because this is a little tricky. The The second comment at 42. Having second thoughts toward you. So, linachem, with a nifal, can mean to think something over. He's having second thoughts over the sibling relationship that exists between you. In other words, linachem in this sense means reconsidering something, which means I already considered it once, but should I stick with that thought or do something else? So Rashi says it's reconsidering the sibling relationship to consider a different thought, a thought foreign to the relationship between brothers, to become estranged from you and to kill you. That's one interpretation here. And a Gadik Midrash interprets this as follows. The Nachem can also mean to comfort mourners. Lehis Nachem, if I took it in its literal grammar, is a hispa'el. A hispa'el is a reflexive verb. It means to do something to yourself. So here, Rashi says, this he calls agadik. First one doesn't call agadik. It's going to get harder in a minute. The first one he doesn't call agadik, this he calls agadik. Here it means he's comforting himself. He's comforting himself. You're already dead in his eyes, and has drunk over you the cup of consolation, because what you did in taking the blessing, and he's lost out, and he feels terribly victimized. Yeah, but it'll be okay because I'll kill him. And then everything will be fine. He won't get the blessings when he's dead, will he? Mm-hmm. So I can stop that. So this he calls an agadic interpretation. Then he gives a third one, according to the simple meaning of pshat. So now, if you're keeping track, the first one was given blank. The second one was called agadic. The third one is called pshat, which means the first one isn't pshat either, but it's not agadic either. It's sort of somewhere in between somehow. So we'll have to figure that out. According to the pshat, it means consolation. He's consoling himself over the loss of the blessing through killing you. I'm sorry. I said it. I got mixed up between the order of the two of them. Here, this is consoling himself according to the loss of the blessings. He's comforting himself, and he's contemplating your death and thinking to himself, "But at least I'm going to kill him." The agadic interpretation is that he's consoling himself in the way in which people console themselves by drinking a cup of wine as a consolation to sort of dull their pain. So he's in. So then the two of them are. I didn't get this quite right. And both of them are consoling himself, but in the one case it's like, well, he got me, but I'm going to get him back. So okay, it'll be tit for tat, and we'll be even. That's consolation in the sense of making it up and thinking, I got hit, but I can hit back, so it'll be okay. The middle interpretation is not that I'm going to hit him and that'll make it okay. It evens the score. It's just I'm in terrible pain, and the cause of my pain won't be here anymore. It'll be gone. Not the question of evening the score. And the first one is having second thoughts. So I think the differences here are like as follows. You see, let's say when the generation goes to the flood, and God resolves to wipe them out. So it says, but that it was misnachem, meaning I created them and told them to fill the earth. I was investing in them. I wanted them to be the human population that I will deal with, but not anymore. I've changed my mind. Same thing with having Saul as king. Says to Samuel the prophet, Nichamti, I've reconsidered it, I've thought it over, and I've decided that Saul will not be king. Now, so reconsider here, as Rashi points out elsewhere 2 or 3 times, reconsider here means like this. I decided on X then in those circumstances. Now I'm thinking, shall I continue X or not? Don't read into this regret. Some translations translate as regret. That's not appropriate for an all-knowing and all-powerful creator. There's no regretting what he did in the past as if I made a mistake. The question is, circumstances have changed. Shall this be continued or shall it not? So here, according to the first explanation, he's having second thoughts, but you see, in the verses, we don't have any evidence of the first thoughts. We don't have any evidence he ever thought of Jacob as his brother and cared about him as a brother and had a sibling relationship with him, that now he's thinking, well, maybe I should think differently about him. So this is not pshat, because it has to invent something that isn't otherwise in the text. That's why I think why that's not pshat. The agadic relationship disconnects it from the killing. The agadic midrash says that the killing will. He's already rejoicing in your death. I'm planning to kill him, and I'll be very happy when I kill him. Not because it evens the score. I'll just be happy when he's dead. It'll be good that the world be rid of him. So, to have consolation now from contemplating what will be later is something which is, I guess, farther from what the verse is talking about than, because here she's describing, and what's she saying? She's saying this to Jacob. Listen, you're in danger because your brother wants to kill you. So to describe him as already taking pleasure in your anticipated death is far from what Jacob has to think about. He's planning to kill him. The simple meaning is, you did something to him that he's suffering from, and he wants revenge. This is an explanation of his motivation. So you know somebody wants to kill you, makes a big difference why he wants to kill you. Maybe he's a hired assassin. If he's a hired assassin, I wonder how much they're paying him. $10,000? What would happen if I offered him $100,000 and a safe escape route with plastic surgery so he could escape? Maybe I could buy him off. He's only doing it for money. Or something else. To know the motivation of the person who wants to kill you is very important. Right? The agadic midrash doesn't do that. Doesn't give that to you. And having second thoughts is something which depends upon something which isn't in the text at all. Anyway, these are three different levels that Rashi distinguishes between one another, and depend upon different interpretations of what is going on here. Now, let's remember what we said at the very outset. They could all three be true. It's not as if to say that one is saying the other one's wrong. Only when you have an explicit statement that someone says, not this, but that, is it appropriate to infer that there's a disagreement. Otherwise, this is one of the problems with many people in academic Judaism. They glory in multiplying conflict because then they want to show you that the tradition wasn't consistent. So they invent conflicts where they're not justified. These are three acceptable ways to read the words, and as I told you, the Torah communicates in many ways simultaneously. There's no reason to think that they're in competition with one another. At any rate, so that's what she tells him. Number 1, 43. So now, my son, heed my voice and arise. Again, Shema b'koli, she's giving an order. Flee to my brother Lavan to Haran, and dwell with him for a few days, till your brother's wrath subsides. Till his brother's anger against you subsides, and he forgets what you've done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there Why should I be bereaved of both of you on the same day? So there's a lot in this verse. I just want to comment on one thing because of the time that we have left. When she says, I shouldn't be bereaved of both of you on the same day. Where did that come from? And what's both of you? So I know people who think, let's see, Esau said, I'm waiting for my father to die, and then I'll kill my brother Jacob. So maybe it means if Isaac dies Tuesday at 10 a.m., by 11 a.m. Jacob will be dead. I'm not waiting around. My father's gone, bang, I'm going to hit him. Why should I be deprived of both of you on the same day? My husband Isaac and you Jacob. Rashi doesn't take it like that. Look what Rashi says. In verse 45, the second comment, both of you. If he will rise up against you and you will kill him, he'll attack you and you'll succeed in killing him. His sons arise and kill you. And that's the two of them. She's afraid of losing both sons at the same time. Now, first of all, notice that she cares about Esau. We saw at the beginning of this whole sequence, it said that she loved Jacob. We commented then that at the very least she couldn't love Esau equally, because then it should have said she loved Jacob and Esau, in the context of talking about both of them. But here, she says to him, it will be a tragedy to me if I lose Esau also. So that means she didn't hate him. She wasn't totally disconnected from him. She knew his inferiority. She had a prophetic background that the money and power should not go to Esau, it should go to Jacob. But she's telling Jacob that that she'll lose the two of them in the same day. And she's also telling Jacob, let's see now, your brother wants to kill you. Don't console yourself with the thought, he's not going to get me. I'm smart enough. I'm careful enough. I'm powerful enough. If he tries to kill me, I'll kill him. Don't think you're going to make that way out, Jacob. Because she has children. They'll chase you and they'll kill you. So, and they'll do it right away. There won't be any. So even if you manage to overcome him, you'll be dead anyway. So she's telling him that the consequences here, if we don't do something to avoid Esau's anger, if we don't do that, then it's going to be a terrible double tragedy. So that's why I'm telling you to flee to my brother and dwell with him, as she says, for a few days, which turns out to be a long time, till your brother's anger against you subsides, and then I can avoid the tragedy altogether. That's what she pleads with him to do. Okay, we'll pick it up tomorrow.